I want a table saw. Now I know what you're thinking. You've got a table saw. This is a murder machine. It doesn't cut straight. The riving knife snapped off. I can't fix it. Time to make some money. Thing is, if I want to make money, I need to actually sell something that I build, which I don't really do. Over here on the shelf of pointlessness, I don't even have any shelves, I've got 2 tabletops, but I wasn't happy with them, so they've just been sitting here. I haven't released a video on them. I need to actually build something that I would be happy to sell, and people would be happy to buy. So here's my strategy. I'm going to build 2 small coffee tables. I'm going to see if I can build them alongside each other, because if I can build 2, I should be able to build 4 or 5. I'm going to use exactly the same construction process, different finishes, see what sells best. The only thing I'm going to need your help with is telling me how much to sell them for. I've never really sold anything other than some coasters and chopping boards. So, best get to work. First, let me explain. These 2 coffee tables are going to go on Etsy. I'm going to try and sell them for as much money as I can. In order to do that, I need to keep material costs down. I'll run through at the end of the video, if you're still watching, exactly how much I spent on this project. I will go through the amount of time it took me, and then I will go through kind of what I'm thinking in terms of the price for selling. So I've just knocked together a very basic circle jig. This is for my router to go round in slow, shallow passes on that ply board that I got from B&Q. It cost about 16 quid for that half sheet of ply, which is overpriced, it's thin, but it'll do. So from that £16 investment, I'm hoping to make the base for 2 coffee tables. Now, normally I like to build stuff out of free material as much as possible, but because I'm going to be selling these, I wanted them to have a flat base that didn't take me hours and hours to do. So plywood was the only option. After a couple of shallow passes, I then finished this off with the jigsaw, cutting as close but not too close to that line as possible. This is something I've seen Bourbon Moth do, and he recommends it to avoid any tear out, and I must say this worked like an absolute charm. Cleanup's easy and just requires a flush cut bit. Now you can do this with a palm router, but this bit was already in my router, so I just stepped over to the table. From the thumbnail you'll know I'm not just planning on selling cheap sheets of plywood that have been coloured. I want to up-level this project. I'm going to be using cheap materials, so the key here, the theme throughout the whole project, is adding details, adding little touches of the craftsman to make these projects worthwhile buying. So to do that, I need material. That material is coming from 2 pallets. The first pallet I broke up was quite clean, but it was thinner material. However, I thought it was going to take less time to prepare, and I honestly believed that this would create the nicest looking table. The old dirty pallet, I, to be honest, thought was going to be mostly junk, but that's the one that I am most proud of. That has created a stunning table, in my opinion anyway. Then it was over to the thicknesser. Thicknessing is only just slightly better than sanding in my opinion. I find this one of the most boring jobs of the woodworker. One day I hope to be able to buy timber that is not rough like this. Don't get me wrong, I know you save money. But God, is it tedious. So, I've got all my wood milled up. Now I mentioned earlier about using cheap products. In fact, this is all free, it's from Pallets. A bug just interrupted me. So, I've got all of my pallet wood milled up. I've got my circular base ready. I said earlier I wanted to use cheap materials, but I want to charge a premium. So to do that, or to justify that to myself, I need to make this fancier. Now, I don't really know how to do that other than making a nice pattern on here. So I've cut these test pieces, I think they're called rhombuses, and these are what you call tessellating patterns. And they can go in lots of different orientations. And you can get all kinds of looks. The one I'm going for, because I've got a screw hole here from cutting the circle, I'm going to go from the middle, branch out like that. Now I'm questioning whether I've got enough wood, and I've milled it all to a thickness I can't remember. So if I haven't, I'm going to be sad. Anyway, These are all cut on 45-degree angles, and then I put a stop block up to match the length of that cut. Then you just move it along. So I'll get cracking. So I'll say that again just in case you missed it. That stop block from the saw should be the same distance as that 45-degree cut. So this will change every time depending on how wide your boards are. But as long as that stop block is the same distance from the blade as the length of that 45-degree cut, you're golden. That will mean that all sides are of equal length and you can create that tessellating pattern. So that took less than 10 minutes to cut all of these. Now, before I go and do the other set of wood, another 10 minutes, just want to make sure it works. I am very happy with this. The only issue is I've obviously got these little gaps here, so I'll have to cut little pieces of wood to glue into there. Now, could that have been avoided? No. The reason why I cannot make it any bigger is because the lengths have got to be the same on every side, so you can only work with the width of the boards you're using. Now, if these boards had been 5mm wider, brilliant. But they weren't. So I am going to have to figure out a solution for this. But I know it works now, so I'm going to get to work on the other set. I don't really know how to tell you this, and I know it's not what you're watching this channel for, but I've measured everything right. It all fits together, and I've got enough pieces left over to fill all of these gaps. Could this be the first project that I ever get completely right? Shouldn't have said that. So after a bit of light hand sanding, the worst of all the sandings, just to take off the rough edges of those pieces, I then headed indoors. You may have noticed by my breath on this video, the garage is still freezing. In fact, it's snowing outside. Now I've got a lot of pieces to glue here, and the open time on my glue is not that long, so I grabbed everything that I would need and made sure it was all with me. So I've got my glue, CA glue, activator spray, an old credit card to spread the glue, a cloth to clean it up, and a beer to keep me hydrated. There really wasn't much to this glue up, other than I had to work quite quickly. So I really just threw a load of glue on the surface, spread it all about, and then as I stuck each piece down, I just glued the edges of each piece and then just assembled the pattern. Now, I didn't really learn my lesson properly until I did the second one, but you're really better off trying to alternate the grain of these woods to give a truly random pattern. Later that night, after the glue was dried, I made what was quite a rash decision, and I probably shouldn't have. I went back and I used wood filler to fill any of the cracks. Now the trouble is, at this point, I thought I was going to be using a coloured wax on this tabletop. Now if I was using a coloured wax, I've tested that on wood filler and it makes the wax completely invisible. But I didn't. I ended up oiling this tabletop, so I really shouldn't have used that filler because you can see it. It creates a highlight that I absolutely love, but it might not be for the customer. So the next day I went back into the garage, back into the cold. Then I used my jigsaw to cut as close to that plywood as I felt confident with. Now the reason for this is I'm going to be using a flush cut bit again, or at least I think I am at this point, to trim everything up, and the less work that has to do, the better. What I actually ended up doing was reattaching that circle jig that originally cut that plywood and took out the majority of the material with that. It's a much better tip than the one that's in my router table. Anyway, once that reached its full depth, I then squared it all up on the router table using that flush cut bit. That combination worked amazingly. I'm so glad I drilled that hole in the bottom baseboard. Now, it worked perfectly for this thicker material, and I've got a feeling that this isn't just pine. I think it's a bit of a mixture. The thinner material, you can see there's some chip outs here. I am going to do a round over on the top, so hopefully a lot of that will disappear. If not, it adds character. Time to sand. After a lot of sanding, in fact it wasn't too bad to be fair, but after a decent chunk of sanding, I then added that round over. Now on the top I want a round over, and on the underside I want a 45-degree bevel. All that was required here was putting the correct bit in my router table, pushing it up against the fence and then slowly moving it around whilst keeping my hands a safe distance from the bit. Okay, so I've just given a slight round over to the top with a 45-degree chamfer to the bottom. The reason for that is I wanted the ply board to be as invisible as possible. This one went perfectly. This one, however, there's just this little section that's chipped out, and I really don't know what to do about it. What I did actually worked out reasonably well. I basically squirted a load of super glue or CA glue in there. Then I sprinkled a bit of sawdust on, then sprayed that with the activator, then let that dry, and then a bit more CA glue, let it soak through, and I just kind of built it up in layers. After that I just sanded it back down and it rendered it near enough invisible. I was quite pleased with that. So, I've got these hairpin legs, and that's what I'm going to use. Now this was a difficult decision to make because I was going to make some legs, but that causes two problems. Number one, it adds time, so then I'm going to have to inflate the price even more. Number two, if I were to make them, they probably wouldn't be detachable. That creates a shipping problem. They come in packs of 4, but I only want to use 3, so if I make a few of these tables later on down the line, eventually I'll get a set of legs for free. But because I only want 3, I've got to figure out angles. Now a triangle has 60 degrees in each angle, so I've made a 30-degree block on the miter saw, and I think this might work. So I've marked 120 millimeters there from the center circle. Then, if I line my ruler up like that, line the point of the triangle there, that will give me this line here. And if I do the same on the other side, like that, and then just extend these lines, and then if I measure exactly 12 centimeters from there to there, I get that. If I measure from 12 from there to there, I get that. If I join this up, that is not centered. Is it? So that's 12, that's 12, that's 12. If you make an equilateral triangle, is the center point not the center point? It's fine, I haven't broken my brain. It's just an optical illusion. That is the same distance as that, which is the same distance as that. And then if I rotate it round, it still looks like a problem, but now on this side. Ha, maths. Okay, time for my big boy pants. For this one, the thicker one, I'm just going to use Danish oil. I really like the colours of the wood. I really like there's a mixture of patterns. This one's a bit more boring, so I thought I'd paint it black. Stain it black. Never used it before. This is probably not the right time to test it. Anyway, I'm going to do the bottom first, so I'll bring it back when it's a bit more interesting. Right, I've just moved the other one because I Danish oiled it, and I definitely didn't drop the paintbrush with the black stain on and spray black stain all over it, which now has to be sanded again. That didn't happen. But this stuff is crazy. And I don't know if I like it. I shouldn't put my head here. Gonna get high as a kite. Forget what I said. It might just be the fumed, but this looks amazing. Very happy. Not so happy that it's ruined the other table. Hello! I'm clean in clean clothes without dust and grime all over me. I've even had a shower. Now, these are my two tables. I'm going to run through how much it cost, time invested, like I promised I would if you're still sticking around to this point. So let's start with this one first. This is the one I'm least happy with. It was all going well until I put that black stain on. The stain looked amazing to start with, but I'm not quite pleased with it. I wish it had more sheen, but I'd already committed to the wax, and yeah, I don't really like it. But again, that's my personal taste. In terms of time it took to build these two tables, about 8 hours. Difficult to measure because I move the camera around and do stuff for YouTube, but call it 4 hours a table. The legs for this one cost £35 from Amazon. I wanted contrasting legs, but I don't really like the quality. The legs, £35. Finish for this about £5. Call it maybe £5 of glue. This one though, this is my pride and joy. The wife is already giving me hassle about selling this because I just love it. Hairpin legs, £20 off Amazon. Again, about £8 for the ply board to go underneath. Another £5 to £10 worth of finish and glue. But I'm so pleased with this one. All in all, about 8 hours time investment for about £85 to £90 worth of monetary investment. So now my question for you, the reason I needed you to help, what do I charge for each of them? Definitely not as much for this one, despite it costing more. I'm just not as pleased with it personally. And if I could do it again, I'd do it a lot differently. This one though, I can't see a world in which this would have worked out better. I love it. Thank you so much for watching. Please tell me in the comments, what should I be charging for these? I've never sold anything. See you in the next one. Bye bye.